You've got a working vibrato that is based on a cam, and it's got rollers, so you've always got that witness point. So the next big step was getting it on Gibson.
Well, no, the next big step was finding some money somewhere.
Finding some money.
For God's sakes, because you got all your money in this prototype. You're living okay, you know, the kids are okay in school, you got a roof over your head, you're eating okay, you got a really crummy car, but who cares? Dave, Story, and I decided, let's really, first of all, build something for Gibson. And the reason is, Fender was killing everybody with the Stratocaster. And so there must be somebody out there at Gibson that would like to have part of that market share. So I made an appointment. We flew into Chicago. I rented a car out of Chicago and then went out to Kalamazoo, Michigan. And of course, like every major OEM, they're not interested in committing their company to anything they see. And they really don't want to sign non-disclosures and so forth. But in this case, I thought it was very, very important because this was such a unique piece. In any case, we had to stay an extra day and a half until finally they got that through before I'd open the case. And we come up with this on a Les Paul. And we had a Les Paul there, and I actually had Gibson's name right there. And this is one of the actual from 44 years ago. And they all looked at it and didn't really realize what it is. Everybody wants to see a fulcrum. I said, no, it's completely different. It's smoother. It feels different. Because when you press on the bar, you don't have to press that much harder. It isn't like a fulcrum. This is the difference. So we spent a half a day explaining what a cam-driven deal was, and pretty soon we did a demonstration to the people at Gibson, and everything went well. Finally, I think they contacted Les Paul, and Les Paul said, well, okay, let's take a look at this. I want to say something about everything here. The fact is, there's a lot of people involved here in the development of this stuff. It isn't just me. Now I want to show you what it took to come up with that. Why don't we make it like this, and then we'll put the lockdown on where, on the angle that it can go like this, so that we can lock that down. But we knew that that would be a problem, so we put that. And we even sprung it different with the coil spring underneath in the beginning. If we run into different spacing, maybe it isn't all the same spacing. Well, this one here, you can see you could have different spacing all the way out to there. I eventually had to go with the center line on the original spacing of the stop tail piece. People will correct me, I'm sure, but at that time it was 2.030 string spacing, center to center. We had little saddles that we made. And Dave Story was 100% did this and went to the mill and made them and so forth. And I even left enough room so we could put an extra saddle in there for somebody when they eventually go to a 7-string. Because what I was thinking is if they went to their V or whatever, they may want to have more like a Fender spacing, which was at, 2.120 or even greater than that. 2.125, quarter of an inch. Eventually we had to do away with that because these saddles simply weren't strong enough.
Now you got your deal with Gibson.
Well, not quite. Ending up to all these different steps we went through to get cured. Now we have to decide, okay, how many bucks and so forth. So we had to do pilot runs for them. And then eventually Gibson order for 500 tremolos, for God's sakes. 100% milled everything on this Gibson tremolo, which is going on the internet today for as high as $900, used, looking terrible. This is the one, well, I got a few new ones here, but this is what it looked like today. Everything on it is 100% milled.
So that is an extremely high quality bridge, even by today's standard.
It's really heavy, and it's 100% out of 360 half hard brass. As we develop and the people like yourself know this, we come out what we called was a flyer, and this was the flyer like that would go on struts. You can see it's the same saddle set, same cam, everything. It's only the hookup that's different. We sold some of this into a heck of a lot of them to an outfit called IMC, International Music Corporation, with Jerry Freed and Tommy Moore. And they were very influential in that. The Flyer was a more inexpensive one that we made. This one was not inexpensive, but the saddle set was.
So was the Flyer before the 2300 then, or did you go 2300, 2200, and then the Flyer just get rid of the surplus parts?
Exactly, but we were selling this saddle set long before we made this saddle set.
Let's talk about the 2300 and the 2200. Obviously, wildly different from the Flyer and from the Gibson Super Tune Vibrola, mainly because the saddles are different. You can change your string spacing. There are those who complain about the Phillips head screw, being directly under the string, how easy it is. Yeah.
Where?
Okay, so if we're looking at it,
yeah,
the string goes directly over the Phillips head screw.
Okay, that used to be an old problem. It's no longer a problem. The reason is we used to put a button head in here, a button head screw.
Right.
That stood up, an extra maybe 4,000 or 5,000. Now we have to put a chamfer in there and we put a flathead in there. And these are 440s. It was the same thing we moved. Only this is different. At that time, you're absolutely right. If you gave no angle, in which you put this in too flat, it was so flat that you didn't even use a riser screw. Believe it or not, that string would still clear that button head by about 3,000. However, if you put this and it wasn't absolutely flat, and you put it a little bit down back or to the front, it would hit that button head. And so a lot of people complained about it. So I think it was about 20 years ago, because I didn't change it right away. Because what I would always say to people, you got to have more angle, you got to have more break point over that roller. I don't want the string popping out of the roller. So that was one of the main reasons I used a button head, so that they had to raise that. Otherwise, the string from time to time in a flat position, well, I don't like the Kahler because it pops out of my damn roller. But eventually, I get convinced. Maybe 5 to 10% of the people that were buying will complain about it. And then pretty soon, we get a couple of OEMs to complain about it. But I wanted that roller higher. I didn't want it so flat.
We've got the 2300, we've got the 2200. The Gibson run is done.
Oh, I might say about Gibson, they absolutely stuck to the deal, because after 500 pieces, I said, I'm going to put my name on it. Put a few thousand after that with the Kahler name on it. Now, people might say, well, why would you want to do that? Well, I was in the bridge manufacturing business. Everybody wants a different string spacing. Some people will say, well, hey, I want a 2-inch or less. Somebody else will say, well, Gibson at that time, it's always varying. And with the fender at the wide, or somebody was in there and said, well, I got to have 2 inches and 100,000. So I got to have 2 inches and an eighth. If you're a manufacturer and your customer only wants to buy 50 of them, only wants to buy 20 of them or 30 of them, you can't do that. Even if you just built thick strings for Bridgeport, you couldn't afford to do it. The bridge would be so high, expensive, nobody would buy it. I figured out early on that I'm going to have to make an erectile set out of this, because this saddle set must move left and right for any spacing, any weird spacing, any standard spacing, whatever standard was. That was the reason then for the lockdown saddle set, the pivot. There's 8 pieces in each one of these little saddles. And that way, actually, the saddle sets could be made for as much as 50% less. We have to make a profit. If we don't make a profit, we can't pay for R&D. We can't make for anything. Gibson, and I'm not real clear in my dates, so forgive me if I got this wrong, but I think it was 83 at McCormick Place in Chicago, when all this stuff was really started to hit. The flat mounts, as well as that, we actually wrote over $3 million in orders at that time. That'd be over $10 million a day at one shop. And then when I went back, I couldn't finance it. It was just the damnedest experience. I was so happy. Dave was so happy. All of our people in the company were so happy. Our OEMs were happy for us, And we thought, man, this is going to be wonderful. But if you're going to make that much stuff, you got to have more machinery, more insurance, more people, more building, more everything. And it took me over 2 years actually to raise the money, because I would not give it up to a venture capitalist. A venture capitalist says, sure, we'll take it. You own 30% of the company. You get to do all the work. And by the way, when you don't make enough money for you, I'm going to bankrupt you. I'll go with something else. And I had experience with that prior. So I didn't want to do that. So I'm just going to tough it out, and we'll eventually have enough capital.